Next up, we're discussing the appeal to emotion fallacy. Now, many textbooks will divide this into multiple fallacies, such as appeal to pity or appeal to fear. But these fallacies all have a common thread. They appeal to emotion to prove their point, rather than appeal to the facts. Let's look at a couple of examples. Here we have one sad-looking dog. Don't those eyes just make you want to give it whatever it wants? A cookie, a loving head scratch, your dinner. Or maybe you could put the picture with some sweet music in the background, and a tender voice brimming with emotion says something like, "This little dog is cold and afraid, and he and so many others need to feel the warmth of human kindness. Dig deep into your heart. Send us money now." Well, if they do that, be careful, because the dog looks cute and sad, and the voiceover sounds sad, but if this is all they can tell you about the situation, they haven't actually told you what they will do with the money or how they'll help the dog. Now, this isn't to say that there are no animals that need help or that there are no charities that are worth donating to. There certainly are. But pay attention, because it's easy to get caught up in emotion and think you're doing a good thing when in fact you may not be. Now, as far as this particular sad-looking dog goes, I don't know anything about him or her. It's a stock photo. I don't know how old the photo is. I don't know where you can find this dog so that you could help him or her. The dog is quite possibly somebody's pet and is well cared for. So don't let those sad eyes fool you. Once again, if we make a list of pros and cons regarding giving your dinner to the dog, we can see that sad puppy dog eyes really isn't a logically based reason for doing so. Besides, you know very well that he'll give you the sad puppy dog eyes again in a few minutes, even if you do feed him now. The puppy dog eyes, compelling as they may be, are a distraction. Another emotion that works well in an appeal to emotion is fear. Fear of bad consequences can be a big motivator. Just tell a kid that they need to shape up, or they don't get dessert, or they don't get to play their game, or whatever the consequences are, and they'll often shape right up. I have vague memories of the presidential election of 1980 between Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan. I was young and wasn't very aware of the real issues, but I do remember that the kids in my class whose parents were in favor of Carter would tell us that if our parents voted for Ronald Reagan, he would start a nuclear war. So, they should vote for Carter so there would not be a nuclear war. Years later, we can say with surety that Ronald Reagan did not start a nuclear war in the 1980s. But of course, we didn't know then that he wouldn't. For kids that didn't understand the issues, the appeal to fear was a pretty good deterrent. The argument might look like this. Premise: if Ronald Reagan is president, he will start a nuclear war. Premise: if Jimmy Carter is president, he won't start a nuclear war. Conclusion: vote for Jimmy Carter so there will not be a nuclear war. Well, none of us wanted a nuclear war, so that made Carter the obvious choice. But of course, there are a couple of fallacies in there, and one of them is the appeal to fear. Instead of focusing on issues and political positions and so forth, the election was reduced to one set of premises, and we didn't really know if they were true or not. History now tells us that at least the one premise turned out not to be true, and Ronald Reagan was elected president. But such an appeal to fear is so effective that Ronald Reagan's opponent 4 years later, in 1984, also attempted to make it. Walter Mondale's team made a TV commercial that implied that Ronald Reagan would start a nuclear war. I think he must have done that because otherwise Reagan was a pretty popular president at the time. And the appeal to fear was a distraction from the real issues. In the end, Reagan won that election also and carried 49 of the 50 states, so we can see that the appeal to fear did not win Mondale the election. But we can also see that perhaps he used it because he didn't have much else he could hold against Reagan at the time. There are other emotions that can be effective in persuasion. For example, an argument could appeal to patriotism. Vote for Proposition 249 because it's the dawning of a brighter day in America. Or, vote for Proposition 249 because children are our future. Or, vote for Proposition 249 because we're all in this together. Now notice that each of these slogans and pictures inspire emotions, but none of them actually say anything about what the bill will do. From this information alone, we can't really know if we agree with it or disagree with it. The people sponsoring it want you to feel the emotions, but they haven't actually told you about the bill. Now, an appeal to emotions is not a fallacy if there is an actual argument based on facts. Sometimes those facts will stir up emotions. That's not wrong. What's wrong is to act like the emotions prove the argument independent of the facts. For instance, if you hear that kids don't have enough art supplies in your city schools, that might make you feel angry. And if the people promoting Bill XYZ show what the bill is intended to do and how it will do it, and how that will help the situation, they're giving you a legitimate argument along with the emotion. You can evaluate the argument and decide whether it makes sense to you.